show today. Have you ever received a call like this?
Hey, it's been a while, so I figured I'd try to catch up with you here. Last time we connected, you were interested in making some serious income online. So, hey, I wanted to share this with you. It's currently making me over $100,000 a month.
$100,000 a month? Or maybe you got a call from tech support reporting suspicious activities.
This is Molly from Apple Support. We have found some suspicious activities in your iCloud account, that your iCloud account has been breached.
What do you guys think? Yeah. We've all gotten those calls. What you just heard, you've all been getting them, were fake calls using real company names in order to scam you. 50%, one half of all phone calls are now automated. And there's a brand new dangerous type of robocall on the rise that is ruining lives. Today we investigate the shocking scams that could be infiltrating your most personal information to steal your money when you least expect it. Take a look.
Know that your social security number has been used for some kind of fraudulent activities.
They are not just a nuisance. Robocalls, which are expected to hit a record $60 billion in 2019, are a costly and dangerous threat.
This is an urgent notification call about your computer.
In 2018, consumers reported losing nearly $488 million to imposter scams. IRS agent imposters, debt collectors, health insurance scams. The spoofers are becoming more and more sophisticated, and the calls becoming more personalized. They use fake caller IDs or have the same area codes as you do to make it seem like it's someone you know. Or more shockingly, they know intimate details about your family.
Phone scammers called my grandmother, telling them that I was in jail and that they needed to send money and I was too scared to call anyone else. And they kept referring to her as my mama. The only way that they would know that I call her my mom was from trolling my social media. And she almost fell for it, and it was extremely frightening.
Others weren't so lucky.
I was scammed out of $3,637. I sent this money by cashier's check.
They requested that I pay them a sum of $5,000 right then and there, or they were going to send the authorities to knock on my door and have me arrested.
I gave him the $600 fee that he spoke of. I didn't hear from them again. So yes, I have been officially scammed.
My grandmother was targeted and pursued nonstop by a ring of fraudsters.
Angela Stanek testified before Congress after her grandmother cashed in her life insurance and remortgaged her home, handing over her entire life savings to robocall scammers.
My grandmother died with $69 in her bank account.
The reality of her grandmother's mistake was so overwhelming, Angela says it drove her to suicide.
It is clear to us that the circumstances that led to her death were caused by these criminals.
Angela, who you just saw, joined us now via Zoom. Angela, I'm very sorry for your loss, but I applaud your bravery in speaking out on this scam. Now, you say your grandma believed she was being contacted by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission out of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Why did she think that?
They were using call spoofing technology to manipulate the caller ID to say U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, also the Federal Trade Commission, and all the phone numbers were coming out of Washington, D.C.
And what was the excuse they gave for contacting her?
They told her that she had won a very large cash prize and she had to pay the taxes up front. And they were going to facilitate that, and they were going to walk her through the steps to get the taxes paid. And then they were going to deliver this money to her, sort of like a sweepstakes.
It's very believable. So your grandma calls you to ask for some money. How much money did she ask for, and did she give a reason for why she needed the money?
My grandmother called me about 10 days before she died, and she was very insistent that she had to have money wired to her that day. She needed $6,000. And I asked her what it was for. She told me she was having an eye procedure done. This doctor wanted to be paid up front. I immediately told her, I said, Grandma, let me talk to your doctor on your behalf. Let's get this straightened out. There's no reason why you should have to pay for this up front. We're going to work it out. And she became completely panicked and afraid. So I reassured her. I told her I was going to talk to my father. We were going to work things out. And I did. And she had just borrowed money from him the week before, $11,000. So for her to now need another $6,000, it was a huge red flag, a huge red flag.
So after your grandma's frantic request for money, things took a tragic turn. Can you share with everybody what happened?
We got a phone call that she was in the hospital. She lived in Louisiana and we're in Texas. So my mother and my uncle, of course, raced to be with her in Louisiana. They did not get there in time. Unfortunately, she passed away in the hospital, but she took her life. She took her life because of this.
And then the compound matters. In the midst of your grief, 10 days after you lost your grandmother, there was another bombshell. You uncovered something about your grandma's financial state.
We found, when we started cleaning out her home after her funeral, we found bags full of wire receipts where she had been sending large amounts of money overseas.
So it took about 6 years, but Angela finally found out who her grandmother was really wiring the money to. And the truth turned her family's world upside down. Who took advantage of her?
This was a call center in Costa Rica. There were 9 individuals involved. She also did a reverse mortgage on her home before she died, and we believe that they walked her through the steps to do that. So after she passed away and there were new owners in her house, they kept getting certified documents in the mail, and it was the Department of Justice notifying her that they had caught the individuals who were scamming her.
Thank goodness for the DOJ. So you had a chance to confront one of the scammers in court. What was that moment like for you?
So I flew to Charlotte to read my victim impact statement while she was being sentenced. I stood about 10 feet away from her and I explained to her how horrific my grandmother died. And I shared with her how the things that she did led to my grandmother's death and how she had my grandmother's blood on her hands.
She's a sick person. And Angela, I thank you for speaking out. Despicable actions.
Thank you for bringing awareness. Thank you.
All right, so they caught those scammers, but I wanted to find out more about the other fraudsters making robocalls. So I put an investigation squad on the case. Up next, what we uncovered about the lengths scammers will go to and the access they have to you and your family. It's going to shock you. Plus, what you can do to protect yourself from being duped. We are back investigating the new robocalls preying on you and stealing your money. Now, I wanted to find out who was behind the many calls that I get on my phone each day. So I sent Mars Campo from my investigation squad to help track down the scammers. Take a look.
Who are these scammers and how do they operate?
Before we begin with the legal proceedings,
I started my investigation returning a voicemail claiming to be from the Social Security Administration. A busy signal, clearly a spoofed number. These scammers move fast to cover their tracks. I reached out to John Brayout at fraud.org, who works on the front lines of fraud prevention.
Who are these scammers?
Well, the scammers are criminals, and they are often located overseas where they are out of reach of U.S. law enforcement.
And how are they operating?
Well, they operate out of high-tech call centers where they can generate billions of phone calls. They mask their identity so that your caller ID looks like the call is coming from Social Security Administration or the FBI. And they use sucker lists to target potential victims.
How are they so effective at duping people?
Well, they create a sense of urgency. They might say something like, the police are on the way, and they want you to send the money before you stop and think about it.
And that's exactly how one team of scammers was operating in Fontana, California, when 2 of them were arrested. I spoke with the lead agent in the case, David Campa.
This investigation began when a citizen called and reported that he was called by a subject who posed as a Social Security Administration officer and demand money from a citizen. The suspect kept the victim on the phone the entire time. The victim went to his bank, eventually Target, purchased the gift cards, and then gave the suspect the gift card numbers over the phone.
They were on the phone with him the entire time?
Correct. That's another tactic they use. Keep them on the phone so they won't notify law enforcement.
The overseas scammers evidently forwarded the numbers directly to the suspects, who were standing by to use them immediately.
What did you find after you tracked down the suspects?
We located over $1 million worth of Apple products.
Well, I'm a scammer from India. Nobody must know who I am.
YouTuber Ben Taylor specializes in scams.
Well, I have a YouTube channel where I kind of document these scams and how they work.
We're really interested in understanding who these people are.
Like you and me, they're humans. They have lives and they have families, and many of them come from countries where they live in poverty, and so they resort to scamming. And a lot of them do feel bad about what they do.
Recently, Ben Taylor's been posting about his relationship with an overseas scammer who claims he now wants to save victims from being scammed.
You're involved in a telephone scam and you need to hang up. Don't send them any money.
I don't know. Who should I trust?
What can you tell us about this guy that you've been in touch with?
He works in a scam call center, and he does it because it's hard to make a living over there. He does realize that, it's not right. So he wants me to kind of educate people, and he's been able to send me pictures of what the call center looks like inside, the scripts that they read. His conscience is compelling him to speak out.
And what have you learned from him?
Here in the States, we might look at a person who steals bread to feed a starving child and we wouldn't judge him too harshly. Well, that's how these people kind of see themselves.
Now, do you think that he would speak to us?
This is potentially a multi-million dollar operation. And so he's very, very cautious about who he speaks to. But at the same time, he might be willing to share what he knows.
Joining me for our investigation squad is Marcy Avacampo and security expert Bill Stanton. Bill, you looked into the most common phone scams. Walk us through them.
Well, first you have the imposters, right? The imposters will pose as the bank, your insurance company, the IRS. You don't go for that. Then there's business and job opportunities, and they may be talking to you that this is just a job you need. How do they know? Because they're profiling you. Then you'll have tech support, and unfortunately this happened to me, and I almost pressed the trigger on it, and that little voice told me not to do it. And then you have other opportunities where they'll prey upon you and they'll see the private sweepstakes. If it looks too good to be true, Doc, it usually and probably always is.
One of those four things will get us. I'm a tech support fiend as well. I'm panicked. Something's gone down, but you might be worried about the IRS coming after you. So, Mara, explain to me how they know so much about us. They know which of those techniques to target us with so they can make us more vulnerable.
Yeah, so there are a couple different techniques that they're employing most commonly. The first up is the spoofing, right? So that's where these scammers can make their number on your caller ID look like it's coming from a legitimate agency. It can look like it's coming from the IRS. They can make it come from a specific area code. That builds in legitimacy because when you answer the phone, you already think you're speaking to someone in a position of authority.
Right area code, right everything.
Yeah.
Now, they know a lot about us. Why is that?
We are putting more out there through social media than ever before. I mean, look at this mock-up profile, right? This woman says, Grandma Beth. Now we know how her grandkids refer to her. She says she's retired. She likes to travel. She gives the name of her partner.
Yeah, there's Billy.
So the scammers are doing all of their research. They're gathering this information and they're using it to convince you that they are legitimate. And the more someone knows about you, the more likely you are to believe them.
If you call Bethany Smith and say, Billy's in trouble, help me out, well, they couldn't scam me, especially when the area code is my area code. All right, up next, what are the biggest risks you need to know about right now? I'll be right back. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on new videos to live the good life.